and welcome back to the garden. A lot has changed in the last few weeks and I'd love to share with you what's been going on. I've got a couple of beds full of strawberries, my kale is looking beautiful, and I've got tomato plants started. So let me show you around this spring garden. My most favorite thing that I have in the garden is this beautiful blue Scotch kale. It is so delicious and it tastes just like broccoli. It is the most tasty treat in the garden. My spring peas are finally reaching the trellis, but just barely. So I've given them a little bit of support with some sticks that I found around the yard. This just helps them to kind of direct them towards the trellis so that they can start climbing on their own. The dragon tongue beans are looking great in the polytunnel. I have had to baby them this spring and make sure they're covered up, but they've done really well in this warm polytunnel. Our hardy native blackberry bushes are showing lots of signs of life and possible berries. This is the little gala apple tree that I have started. It was the bare root tree and it's growing lots of branches. And of course we can't forget the Fuji apple tree. It's growing branches as well. We're using this bed as our potato bed. We have dug 4 trenches and planted about 50 starts in here. And they are doing really well. As they grow, the trenches will be flattened out and then we'll mound up around them so that they can grow. The tubers will actually grow between the seed potato and the top of the soil. So the more that you mound the potato, the more potatoes you're gonna get. So I'll let you know how that goes a little later, but right now they are looking beautiful. Here you can see our watermelon starts and some cucumbers. Behind me we have started another Charles Dowding style bed. We have one on either side of this bed. You can see how we got it started. We've just laid out our landscaping timbers and put our cardboard on the bottom ready for the compost to go on. And this will be our watermelon bed. There's enough room on either side for those watermelon plants to sprawl out so we can plant many of them close together and they can just spread out as they need to and along the grass, so they have plenty of room out here. So in the polytunnel right now I have a lot of my summer veggies. I've got jalapeno peppers, eggplant, black cherry tomatoes, a black crim tomato, which is really good for salsa and dicing up and putting on like bruschetta. The ground cherries are little tomatillos and they're really sweet. They're yellow. We've also got purple tomatillos that I'm excited to try. We've got the yellow pear tomatoes, which I've planted some of those out in the garden already. They're big enough. When they have more than one set of true leaves, that's when I'd like to plant them out. But they're still very vulnerable because they're so short. They should be a little bit, probably a little bit taller. So these 3 plants that I have in here for the yellow pears are kind of backups in case the ones outside don't make it. Because they are more susceptible to cutworms and slugs and all kinds of things when they're small. Some more things that I have growing in here are the Better Bush tomato, which is my only determinate tomato, but I really like to have a determinate tomato because it's a bush variety, it's really easy to care for, and I can plant it later in the fall or early in the spring and have a couple different harvests. So I can succession plant that. The San Marzano tomato that I have started here is really good for making marinara sauce and spaghetti sauces and things like that. So I'm excited about those. Those are long tomatoes, kind of narrow, oval-shaped, kind of like a Roma tomato you'd find in the grocery store. The San Marzano is actually one that parents the Roma, and you can buy that in the can usually, the San Marzanos. Anywhere in any grocery store you can, but I'm excited to try one right off the vine. The spring happens really fast here in Kentucky. It goes from really, really cold to really hot very fast. In just a couple weeks time, we are going from frost and freezing to 85 degrees, pretty much daily. So it does fluctuate so much and gets hot really fast. So the spring is not really the best time for these cold weather veggies. They may not make it. So I'm making my list to make sure I plant the cold weather veggies that I'd like to have in the fall. So I'll be sharing that list with you here soon. I've got to get everything planted and ready and started. I've got to get everything started by June so that I can have mature plants going into the cold weather. I've learned that cold season crops need to be mature before the cold hits. So that's the secret to giving yourself a good fall or winter garden. I've learned a lot this year or this spring about what I want to start in the fall and what really grows well in the spring. There are a few things that didn't mature quite as fast as I'd expect them to, and I probably won't grow them again next spring, but I'm definitely going to try them in the fall. I've got my list, and I'm going to start building on that for my fall garden. This is winter choy that I started from seed back in January. And the winter choy bolted as soon as it received a couple of days of 85-degree weather. So this is not a plant that I would want to plant in the spring again, as our springs are just too variated, and these kinds of plants will easily bolt. However, there are plenty of plants like this beautiful kale that I'll plant in the spring and in the fall. Another great choice for spring is the spinach. It did wonderfully from seed. These are winter lettuce that I started from seed, and a red romaine that I started from seed. These did really, really well this winter, and I think I will grow them in the fall. There are many different kinds of lettuce that do well in the cold weather. However, Buttercrunch is not one of those. Buttercrunch is good to grow in slightly warmer weather. However, the other kinds of lettuce that I've grown, the red curly romaine and the red leafy romaine, did really well in the cooler weather. So I might grow those in the fall and the spring. Beets, however, did not do well because they didn't really have time enough to mature. So I'm hoping that this beet will bolt for me and give me some seeds for fall. These are some cabbage starts that I planted in February, and they never really got big. The season will be over before they can produce anything. So I think those will be ones I need to do in the fall. I would highly recommend broccoli in the spring and fall. These are starts that we purchased, and they've grown wonderfully. One of them got attacked by a critter, as you can see, but the others are doing great, and we're gonna get some broccoli this season. So I got a couple things to share with you that were challenges in the garden just recently. One of them is in this bed there's termites. So we have a hugelkultur bed. These 3 wooden beds have rotting wood lumber in the bottom, and sometimes that does lead to termites. Now, termites are not terrible for the garden. In fact, they're good for breaking down woody compost, but they can be a danger to any woody kind of plants like tomatoes, corn, cucumber squash, zucchini squash, anything that has a woody stem, they may attack. They're not going to attack the smaller plants, but they may actually attack the adult plants. So we do need to get those under control, especially since I planted right in the corner where I found the termites, I planted a tomato plant, and tomato plants are susceptible to termites. So I did use some diatomaceous earth. You can also use borax. Both are not going to harm your plants. The borax can build up in the soil and maybe become too much of a nutrient that it overwhelms the plants. It is used as a garden supplement sometimes, but you can either use borax or diatomaceous earth. I used a slurry of diatomaceous earth and water in a little dispenser, and I dug as deep as I could, maybe 10 inches down into the soil, and sprayed within the soil, and then I covered it up and sprayed on top. So between just a few minutes and 48 hours, it should kill most of the termites, or at least get the population under control. I'm also going to dig a trench between my garden and the house and pour in that borax into the trench, about 10 inches deep or so, just to put a protective barrier under the ground so that they don't come into the house. I will keep an eye on that termite problem and keep it under control. I'll be applying that diatomaceous earth several times this season just to make sure that they are under control. Let me show you the other problem that I've encountered this spring. The soil that we did get from the barn that I told you about has a lot of seeds in it. Now, normally your seeds last about 7 years or so and then they die off, but everything in this bed has been so hard to control as far as seeds go. And you can tell it's stuff that horses like to eat when you look at these weeds that are in this bed. It is very weedy, and it is because we used a lot of the compost. It had a lot of hay in it and hay seeds and things that horses like to eat in there. So it's been really hard getting these beds weeded. The other thing is that we did not put cardboard down below the soil. So the dandelions have been really invasive. They spread by their root system. So they'll set off the root and then they'll pull plants off the nodes. And so as we pull the dandelion, it just encourages it to grow more nodes along the root system. We are going to amend these with more compost when we go to put our summer veggies in here. When the spring ones come out, we're going to put some more compost on top. We'll probably remove the soil and put down the cardboard and then put it back on and then put the compost on top of it. And what that will do is it will suppress the grasses that are underneath and keep that under control. It will also allow us to pull out any roots that belong to that dandelion. If you leave just a little small piece of root in there, it will grow a new plant. So we'll remove those roots as best we can. Keep a close eye on the dandelion because it can come back very easily. Even this soil, it is really good soil. It's got a lot of nutrients in it, but it didn't compost with heat. It composted with age. So if it had composted with heat, it would have killed off all of these weed seeds that we're dealing with right now. The beauty of having a raised bed garden is that you can really control the soil that goes into it. So keep that in mind if you're building your own raised bed garden. You have control of that soil. You can tear it all out if you want to and put in new soil. We are going to be working on this soil in these 3 beds to try to get weeds under control and do it properly when we go ahead and amend it this time. This area here is right on our property line. In between these trees here, it can really provide us a lot of space. We can build a little stall here. So we have started putting some yard waste in this area to start composting. It is much more open, and if it does get to 150, 160 degrees, it's not gonna hurt anything. So we have restarted a compost pile in this area to use with the heat in mind, the heat that it produces, because we sure don't wanna lose our barn. What would a good springtime garden tour be without a tribute to the pollinators? There are all kinds of flowering things all around our property. We have another tree that is flowering right now, and I'm not sure what it is. Maybe you can help me figure that out. This tree was flowering, and it smells just like a honeysuckle. This is a beautiful tree, and they're all over the place around here. So that's another example of things that attract our pollinators that are so important to the garden. Thanks so much for joining me on this garden walk today. I hope that you learned a little something, that you were encouraged and blessed by this video. I just want to sign off by saying please be well, grow, and take care of yourself. Have a good one. Bye-bye.